Hello and welcome to the Broden Property Podcast. Expect to hear from real estate experts, giving us their thoughts on the property market and giving insight into what they hope for in the future. Take a moment to turn off, sit back and enjoy the latest edition of People and Property, the two Ps in a podcast.
Hello, my name is Aaron Higgins. I'm the host of People and Property, two Ps in a podcast. I'm joined today by Tom Storey, the co-owner and director of Horton Storey, estate agency in Shirley, just south of Birmingham. So Tom is a chartered surveyor who a number of years ago, so 3.5 years ago, decided to go alone or go with a colleague and set up his own agency. So Tom, can you say hello to our listeners, introduce yourself and your company, please?
Good evening, Aaron. Yes, I'll be happy to. So my company is Horton Storey, so residential chartered surveying firm and estate agency based in Shirley. So we cover basically anywhere that's straddling the M42 in South Birmingham and Solihull, North Warwickshire. So yeah, I've been trading about 3.5 years now. Can't believe it's been that long, but it was going very well until this year, Aaron, to be honest. Now,
yeah, can you imagine? Yeah.
It's been a torrid old time for everyone this year. So as we'll go on to kind of speak about, agency has been affected like everything else, really.
Yeah, I can imagine. And Tom, so one of the questions we're asking people is, probably one that we're asking everybody every single day in every sort of walk of life is how, 3.5 years, it's great, but specifically, how has the the last sort of 12 months been for yourself with lockdown? I think as much as anybody, estate agents were hit pretty hard with lack of viewings and obviously lack of able to get new properties onto the market. So how have you sort of adapted over the last 12 months, whether it be through video technology, working on your own, your own sort of upskilling yourself and running the company?
Yeah, many ways, other than getting really good at watching Netflix box sets throughout lockdown was really good. So in terms of the way we've adapted, it's more about a resilience in terms of how we deal with our customer journey and the brand. We knew that estate agency was quite archaic in the way that it markets property just with pictures and a 2D floor plan. And in many ways, COVID has been so good for the industry because it's pushed agents to actually invest in the technologies that were available 2-3 years ago, but no one thought they were actually valuable enough to invest in, other than high-end properties, for example, plus £1 million properties that you get it. Now you're seeing a 2-bed mid-terrace on at 200,000. It has a video walkthrough, virtual viewings, and that's something that if you'd have said that would happen to the market 12 months ago, I'd have said slow down on your Guinness. But other than that, there's a big opportunity for smaller estate agencies out there. That's because we can offer that flexibility, and we can change our business plan and deliver those client needs very quickly. When larger corporates are very much structured to idiot proof the process as such, and that leads to a bit of inflexibility. So it's been a really good opportunity for us. We like to keep our business lean and to have those meaningful journeys with people. So from our point of view, growing organically is our business model. And the lockdown, it has affected us. It's affected everyone, but not as much as, say, either larger independent estate agents or the large corporates as well.
Yeah. So with that video technology, and I've had a look at your website and seen some of the properties that you guys are selling. Have you found that because most people are more cautious about either letting people into their homes or going to visit homes, that these sort of owners are happy for you to do a video, so it saves having 10-20 people view it, and maybe when somebody does come to view it, it's coming to make an offer, and then also with possible sort of buyers that they're happy and it's quicker for them to perhaps watch 4 or 5 videos in an afternoon and then say, Tom, I like number 1 and number 3. Can we get a viewing and go from there? So is it perhaps speeding up your process where it's been a bit tougher in the past?
Exactly that, yeah. So it's basically made the whole customer journey more efficient. And it's actually driven down costs. I don't remember the stat, but I think it's somewhere like £1 billion a year is wasted in the property industry surrounding people not turning up to viewings or cancelled viewings. So what you find now is with the current restrictions in place, as long as you adhere to all the government guidelines, you still can carry out a physical viewing. But what we're doing and what the industry is doing in general is having another check and balance to have that virtual viewing. So what you are finding is the relationship between viewings and offers is a lot lower than it was 12 months ago, which from an agency side of things is really good news. So the transaction levels, for example, at the moment, we're suffering a trifecta of lockdown, stamp duty, abolition kind of timescales are quite tight if you wanted to try and get into your new house for the end of March. And we've got the time of the year. We're still seeing motivated buyers in the market, but just less transactions. So less houses, but higher levels of offers.
Yeah, so your sort of stats are, sort of from viewings to sort of sale, obviously much higher as well. And obviously you mentioned there the benefits of yourself being a smaller, more niche practice is obviously a bit more sort of flexible. And you must have seen a gap in the market there, obviously 3.5, 4 years ago when you started doing this. Were you tempted, there's a few disruptors out there, Keller Williams, Purple Bricks, to sort of name a couple. Were you tempted to go down their sort of route, or is the traditional estate agent still got plenty of legs left?
It's a good question, to be honest. If I had to go on one side of the fence, I'd say the traditional form of agency will always play on the insecurities of the client, to be honest, because if you don't transact on property, well, the average person moves house probably 3 times in their life. It's probably going to increase with our generation, but they want that trust element and they want that tangible relationship. The disruptors like the online proposition that Purple Bricks have, I think it is good. And I think there is a space for them in the market, but I just don't think anyone's created that support network for the sellers, whether that be the post-sale for the online model. So I think, it's good from a marketing perspective, but they just haven't got the post-sale, whether that's, the contract chasing, dealing with solicitors, and getting that sale through to completion. I think there's a lot more that traditional agency does for the client. And if you look at fall through rates between a traditional agent and an online agent, the traditional form of agency is a lot lower in terms of fall through. I can
imagine, because as you say, the average person maybe moves 3 or 4 times in their life, and it's the biggest thing that one person would normally do because it's the most money you'll ever spend, the biggest deposit you'll ever put down, and you probably need that comfort of someone holding your hand through the journey, because most people, 99% of people, are pretty scared or sort of worried when they're doing things, whether it's contract agreement, whether it's moving out of one home into another, whether it's moving money across, a large amount of money that most people have saved up for a longer time. So having somebody like yourself or another agent, I guess, sort of shepherding them along that way, there's always going to be that need, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's you hit the nail on the head in terms of why we opened the agency up. And we were just sick and tired of estate agents, to be honest. And the sales patter and the bad silvery coloured suits and winkle pickers. And those aggressive sale tactics, which to be brutally honest, we were trained in, so we know exactly how they work, and basically
know what not to do.
Exactly, yeah. So we just want open and honest conversations with people. People don't like to be sold to anymore, when 10 years ago they were getting sold directly to. People are more informed about their properties. They have Rightmove, Zoopla, and a plethora of digital information. So in terms of valuing, that's come right down. There isn't that need for a direct local expert, just because there's such a depth of comparables out there on the internet now. And I just think we wanted people to just feel relaxed and trust us in their journey, to be honest, because people use estate agents because they have to use estate agents. And if they didn't have to, they'd sell it themselves. But it's that lack of whether it's it's like anything, you won't really MOT your car, would you? You trust the mechanic to do it. So
of course, and with that personal touch, you obviously, as much as you obviously COVID safe, as much as you can meet with people and sort of see people, are you finding that in the last sort of 6 to 12 months, because more and more people perhaps are sort of working from home, or they're not commuting as much, are what people looking for from their homes and their houses, has that changed much in the last sort of few months? Whether that be more garden space or a spare room, or turning a gym into an office?
It has, to be honest.
Or an office into a gym?
Yeah, well, that's you showing your allegiances there. But yeah, it has dramatically. We spent 3 months cooped up within the same 4 walls, and it became apparent that certain people's lifestyles, or the way their homes are, didn't suit a lockdown. And I think a lot of people are preempting almost a lifestyle change for the future if this keeps happening next year. Hopefully it doesn't, but can we adapt quickly to a lockdown, I think, is going through a lot of families' heads. So they need flexible working spaces, or just a living space, whether that can turn into an office or feed the kids. It's flexibility. Outdoor space, as you said, there's been a growth of mindfulness and mental health this year, which is great to see. And one of those things is get outside, connect with the environment. So people aren't commuting less. That means we've seen growth in areas around the green belt as well. So I'd say transport links are only popular with, say, first time buyers, or the younger generation, which may be the ones that are having to go into the offices at the moment.
A bit more sort of closely marked. And again, we've mentioned it a couple of times here, and there's probably 2 words that you've used more so in the last sort of few months than perhaps ever before: stamp duty. What are your sort of thoughts with this extension that we've had on stamp duty, and how much has it affected positively or negatively the market in that sort of Solihull Shirley area, or sort of further afield?
Well, I think in Shirley and Solihull, more than any other area of Birmingham, it had the biggest impact, just because of the price banding. So generally the average house price in Shirley is around 360 up to 600. So you can see that bracket of up to 500,000 for the 0% stamp duty was the main driving factor of the market, when that was launched out. So we've seen a big impact on the stamp duty abolition up to March. We don't know what's going to happen yet at the March, but it's definitely been a lifeline for us. And I'd 100% recommend that he extends it. So
you do think that?
Yeah, just from, that's me being a bit selfish from the area that I'm actually in.
Some more houses.
If I was sat, in other areas of the country, I might not share the same view. But definitely for the Shirley Solihull market, the average house price in Greater Birmingham as well, areas like that have seen activity rising just because of it. But there is that double-edged sword that agents have been slightly overvaluing to compensate for the lack of stamp duty.
Yeah, I can imagine. And Tom, so it's actually I spoke to quite a few people in the last week or so mentioning that you're coming on, and you probably know this, lots of people want to ask estate agents lots of direct questions that perhaps they don't always get to. So I'm going to sort of ask some of those questions for them, and hopefully you can help out some of our listeners, some of my colleagues, friends, and family. So go into as much detail as you can, or you want.
No problem.
But these are really questions that I guess the market really wants to know at the moment. And one for maybe sort of younger people is, should first-time buyers buy now if they can?
Well, $1 million question.
Or should they wait and see the stamp stops?
Personally, I think stamp duty will be extended. So we can look back next year and think how stupid I was to actually nail my my colours to the cross there. But I'd say that property is always going to go up. So if you're trying, it just depends on the local market and what your main factors are for purchasing. You know, is it that you want a certain area, a certain lifestyle, and how buoyant is that local market? So, for example, Sturchley is one of the biggest growth areas in Birmingham at the moment. A lot of millennials are flooding that. It's got great transport links, and it's considered a new boom area. So they're moving for the lifestyle, and that means to get that lifestyle, you're going to have to pay a premium for that. If you're not in a rush, you could wait. However, properties, you know, they do always go up. And the way that secured lending is working at the moment, in terms of your mortgages, banks are asking for larger deposits anyway. So, to be honest, if you have the money for your deposit, I'd get on the housing ladder, because even though it might take a dip, long term, you know, you're not buying for investment. So long term, the capital value of your property will rise, and you're not going to be paying rent whilst doing that. So I'd say to...
So if you can buy.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say, you know, there's a lot of commentary to say when's the right time, but traditionally speaking, property will always go up in value. And if you're going to live there for 5 to 10 years, albeit a giant recession, you know, you won't lose money because you'll be paying off that mortgage.
Yeah. And you mentioned there in terms of, you know, lenders. So what, you know, for sort of first time buyers or anybody at the moment, what's the average sort of deposit percentage that lenders are looking for at the moment?
Pre-lockdown, it was, you know, back to 10%, 15%. Post-lockdown, around 30%. So, it'll take a decade on average to save up that on your own with the current cost of living. So what we've seen is that maybe a 2-tier system is going to be developed, that people with the bank of mom and dad, or we've seen mortgages that have a charge on their mom and dad's property to release the equity for the deposit. That's become popular with some lenders. Or the people that just can't afford it and then have to go down the shared ownership or right to buy areas. So that discounted form to afford a lifestyle. So it's definitely tightened up. The banks want to cover their risk, because a stat is that the first 80% of a loan on a house is 20% of the risk, and the last 20% is 80% of the risk. So you can see why the banks are asking for 30%.
Yeah. So with those other options, obviously you've mentioned there, you know, the sort of the buy to let and what have you, or the different options you mentioned. If you have got only 10%, then use those options if you can to get on the ladder and do that sort of shared ownership. Perhaps it might be, you know, a bit of pain for the moment, but at least you're on the ladder and you're in the right direction.
Yeah, I think personally, be careful with, you know, help to buy and shared ownership, because you're obviously, you know, you're taking out a loan and a secondary loan as well. So you don't really want to use that as a long-term vehicle for occupation, or at least have the funds to make sure that you can happily cover that loan, and especially the interest, because it's the interest that these lenders aren't really telling you about that they're going to earn off you. So if you can, do it just the traditional way. But if it's faced with that or renting, I'd still probably have the help to buy.
Okay, perfect. And then the next question is a sort of two-part question. Is estate agency a sales or property job? And what 3 things make a good agent?
I'd say it's traditional forms of agency, big corporates. It's definitely a sales job. It's about figures, and it's about numbers, and it's about income for the company. It's sad to say, but hence this is why you've seen the emergence of really good small boutique style agencies that do provide customers with meeting the customer needs and developing relationships.
Like Horton Storey.
We do try. So 3 things that make a good agent would be to listen. Other agents that I've worked with in the past and that are in, local areas, they just forget to listen. So everyone's got their needs, everyone's got requirements, and agents seem to forget that you can't sell a house without people moving out of that house. So what we generally tend to start with is, where are you looking to move? What's brought about this move? You need to get the emotive factors in, which are bringing that person to have this conversation with you. So a good listener, a sense of humour as well. Back to the start, when people don't like to be sold to, especially someone coming around with a clipboard and a suit into your home to then try and tell you how good he is. It's just a bit backwards. So sense of humour, and to basically say what you're going to do and do it. Keep it simple, and just deliver the client's needs. But to also be open and honest with the clients, because a lot of people sell their houses or put their house up for sale, and all the feedback they get is, oh, well, we're just waiting to hear back from them. To be open and honest with the clients, it just means that stress levels are going to be reduced. They will have a better customer journey, and you'll have a better relationship with them. So, it's just a win-win all round.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of synergy there between obviously a good estate agent and a good recruiter. You need to listen to what the candidate or the client needs. You need to have a sense of humour, because it can be quite tough. And when you're in a sales environment, you want to sort of keep the human touch there and deliver and be honest, because people want you to just be honest with them. Good feedback from an interview or good feedback from a viewing. Let them know what the property's worth. Let the candidate know what they're worth, and just be very honest with anybody. Let's say it's the vendor or the candidate, and that will work. And Tom, to sort of end on a sort of a positive note possible. If you had a crystal ball and you were looking to the next 12 months, if possible, what would you predict is going to happen, and will that be massively affected by stamp duty, or is there anything else that might throw a spanner in the works?
I think what COVID's taught me especially is that estate agents in the property industry need to be able to, like the wider industry, become more reactive, have more flexible working arrangements. If I was to predict, I'd say the stamp duty will be extended, because I just think the market might stagnate without that impetus. There's a lot of doom and gloom out there for people not to transact, and if transactions don't take place, the wider effect of the property market can massively damage the economy. So I think he might look to extend the stamp duty, but I also think next year will be positive, barring another year like this. But I think there will be slight peaks and troughs within the market, and it's about how agents react to that, how they use their support networks as well. Collaborations on the increase, which is so good to see. Hence this podcast, which is really good. I think interest rates will probably stay low, because you can't risk putting them up. So I think the market will be tentative next year, but it's down to the industry and people within it and the government to develop trust in the market, and to get people in their right mindset to move house and feel comfortable moving house as well.
Brilliant. Tom, well, thank you very much for your time. This has been People and Property, 2 Ps in a podcast. So anybody looking to buy or sell or learn a bit more about property in South Birmingham, please do get in touch with Tom Storey of Horton Storey, and I'm sure they can help you out.
Thanks, Aaron. Tom. Bye now.